This week, when I was looking at the comic book lineup and all the stuff I had to read, I noticed there weren't 1, 2, or even 3 X-Men comics to read. There were actually 7. 7 comic books related to one franchise in 1 week. As you can imagine, I was slightly put off. Just the idea of 7 X-Men comics 1 week I find ridiculous. And here to talk with me about this is the X-Men historian, the Marvel aficionado himself. Doc, how you doing, buddy?
I'm overloaded. Too much.
Yeah, it's insane. They've pretty much watered down the entire X-Men franchise. There's already too many comic books, as is. But to load up 1 week with X-Force and Wolverine, which are kind of related, you've also got Immortal X-Men, you've got X-Men Red, which are kind of the 2 better titles. Why would you put those in the exact same week? We've also got Wolverine Patch, so another Wolverine comic book in there. New Mutants, I think there's another one. Excellent. Yeah, I might be missing 1 or 2 in there, but it was a whole lot of fucking X-Men. And it really spotlights a huge problem of the X-Men under Jordan White at Marvel Comics these days. Last week, there was only 1 X-Men comic, and I understand there are issues with shipping, with material and everything. But you got to space these things out, especially when the quality of X-Men isn't very good right now. X-Men, in my opinion, as far as comic book franchises go, is the most exciting franchise. Like, there's so many different things you can do with X-Men. It's really malleable. You can tell lots of different kinds of stories, but they're not telling very many of them well right now. So to overload 1 week, I couldn't do it, Doc. I looked at it. I read New Mutants because we're going to talk about it tomorrow, but I said, fuck it. If this is what they want to do to me, I'm not going to spend $30 on shitty comic books for X-Men in 1 week.
They need to space this shit out more. It's just that simple. Last week, okay, fine. There was 1. You don't release 7 the following week because it turns people off to the franchise. And then, people only have a limited amount of disposable income, especially in the world right now with rising prices on gas and food and everything else, and rent and mortgages. The idea that you're going to walk in to a comic shop and buy 7 X-Men books in 1 week and forget about the fact that Thor also came out this week, that Venom Lethal Protector, there was a handful of there was a couple of decent sized DC releases this week as well. So this was a big week. And then you're going to shove 7 books under the same line out in the same week after doing only 1 the previous week. You're asking the reader to essentially make a choice. The average reader. Well, I'm going to skip New Mutants, and if it's here next week, I'll buy it. But otherwise, well, maybe that's the end of that for me.
I also don't think it's very wise for Marvel Comics and Jordan White to remind people kind of what a burden it is just to keep up with the X-Men line right now. 7 in 1 week, they're putting upwards of like 17 new X-Men comic books out in a month. That is a lot of X-Men content. It's too much content for the market as it is, and it certainly doesn't warrant it based on the quality there. But just to really slap people in the face with the reality of how much money and time they're wasting on what feels like a pretty dead, kind of stale franchise right now that has it's aimless. It's going nowhere fast. You're daring people to say, I can find something better somewhere else.
You are. You're daring readers to put books back on the shelf and say, you know what? This is too much. If they're putting out 17 books in a month, average month has 4 Wednesdays. If you're putting out 17, that's 4 a week. You're going to double it one of these weeks for no apparent reason. You're drawing attention to the fact that it's a bloated, meandering, somewhat pointless line that's not doing anything for the readers these days.
No, it's about to get worse because we do have Judgment Day about to kick off. We saw the solicitations, and almost all the X-Men books are tying directly into Judgment Day. So if you're not interested in the Eternals, you're not interested in the Avengers and in the X-Men fighting or whatever, what are you going to have, a skip month? They just keep derailing this thing, and it just becomes more and more aimless as time goes by. I guess the only good news maybe is it looks like Vita Ayala is off New Mutants starting in like September.
Yeah,
but even then, she's replaced by Danny Lore.
Vita leaves just to be placed by Little Vita. So whatever, I don't really care. Literally the exact same writer. In fairness, though, we had a skip month last year too. It was called Hellfire Gala.
Well, we did have Hellfire Gala, and that was ridiculous. But it doesn't seem like they're learning their lessons. They're actually decided to go bigger. They decided to scale down Hellfire Gala. I imagine it had something to do with Judgment Day, and they just really upscaled Judgment Day. Do we think anybody's really going to have a good handle on this thing outside of Kieran Gillen and maybe an Al Ewing? Why expose all your writers for the absolute hacks that they are and bring people into this event and then, kind of subject them to some really bad writers? There needs to be something going on in an X-Men that really brings in X-Men readers and services them, because I don't think the X-Men office and the X-Men writers have really done anything actually for X-Men readers.
No, of course they haven't, because they're not X-Men readers. So why would they care about doing things for X-Men readers? It's a big event, and I will give them a little bit of, I guess, wiggle room on this, because historically the X events, there used to be all the summer X events, and there'd be, Extinction Agenda or Follow the Mutants or whatever, and they all did crossover or loosely crossover, Extinction or Executioner Song.
A lot of those events, Doc, were less in totality than the X-Men comics were getting just in September.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of them were 9 or less.
Yeah, they were 9
50 issues.
Yeah, there was a lot of those were 9, anywhere between 6 and 12 issues over 3 months. That's less than the entire X line these days. We thought Phalanx Covenant was big because it had 2 months of X-Men and Uncanny X-Men, and then an issue of every single other book in the X line, back when the X line we thought was bloated in like 97. So yeah, I understand, but I am giving them a little bit of a pass just because it has historically involved all the books. Now, yeah, you're right. I mean, look, this event is shaping up to be almost the same amount of buy-in as like Civil War 1 was back in the early 2000s, and that was excessive. Or even no, more like House of M. That was absurd and excessive because it affected the entire line, and they're doing it this time too. The only books that really what this should have been done as is a big crossover between the actual Avengers title, the actual Eternals title, X-Men Red, and X-Men Immortal X-Men. If you want to throw regular X-Men in there too, that way you'd have 5 parts in a month. You could make it a little bigger than everything else, over 3 months, and it'd be 15 issues.
No, plus you got the mainline series, which probably comes out every other week, so you throw another 6 in there, so it's like a 20-issue event at that point.
That would be pushing it, but I think you could get readers to buy in on that. But this, you're basically saying read everything or you're going to be lost. There's
no quarter right now. Either you're going to read the event or you're not going to read comic books. So, Doc, you bit the bullet on this one. I said, fuck it. I'm not reading X-Men this week. This is beyond ridiculous. Other than New Mutants, which we're going to talk about tomorrow, we're going to do a VIL special. Was it worth reading 6 of the 7 X-Men books that were released this week? Were they really good?
No. Immortal X-Men was mediocre. X-Men Red was kind of dumb. It you had that big setup in the end of the first issue with Storm starting a new brotherhood. Her and Magneto don't even really show up until halfway through the book, and then are there for 2 pages and don't really do anything. Shit, they did more stuff in Immortal X-Men, and that's not even the book that they're in. X-Men Red was just purely a Vulcan issue again. Wolverine was more meandering. The art was decent, but it was a reminder that Ben Percy really, really, really cannot write Deadpool at all. I will give credit to X-Force this week. The art is actually really solid. Robert Gill did a great job. It's almost to that Victor Bogdanovich level on Wolverine. Slightly less detailed Vic on Wolverine, but I will give it credit. I skipped the excellent. I mean, I have it on my to read pile, but I'll get to it eventually. As a 5-issue miniseries, I'm basically just buying the singles and then I'll read it like I would a trade. And then Wolverine Patch was solid. I feel like Larry Hama's getting back into his Wolverine groove. There was a little bit of just kind of random jumping around in the plot. It was a solid book. I definitely recommend that one. Go out and pick it up. I will recommend Immortal X-Men. It was mostly solid, but none of the rest of them go onto my recommend list. Also, yeah, hey, Ben Percy, literally stop stealing plots from Joe Kelly and Steven Seagal, because that's literally exactly what you're doing with the Cerebrax story. I said it at the beginning. Hey, look, you're stealing Joe Kelly and Steve Seagal's plot. Guess what? Every issue, you're stealing more and more of their plot. Literally, go read Hunt for Xavier, because you're literally reading the exact same story right now. And then you're doing Joss Whedon's version of stealing that story in Wolverine right now by doing a Danger storyline. Stop it. Stop stealing plots from the mid-90s.
Yeah, it's probably all that they can do. They're running out of stuff to talk about. There's so many goddamn comic books out there right now. So you feel good about the $30 you spent this week on X-Men? $30 well spent?
Absolutely not.
Exactly.
No. There was about $8 there well spent, and the rest of it was like setting my money on fire.
And that's how a lot of people are feeling. And we see people walking away from Marvel and DC and whatnot. And I can't blame them. I can't tell you. There's so much quality right now, you're making a terrible decision. I say there's so much quality right now outside of Marvel and DC that you should go expand your horizons and see if there's something better out there that more suits your reading needs as far as comic books, because they just aren't delivering. And just, throw in 7 mediocre at best comic books out in the same week, centering around the same franchise. It's just, this stuff is going to blow up in their faces, and you can't blame people for making a decision and walking away when their time and money is completely wasted by these morons.
Look, if you got 7 books to release this week, but only 1 last week, that means you are the problem, not the readers. The readers are going to turn around. That means 8 books over 2 weeks. You could have spread it out 4 and 4, and guess what? You still would have given people money to go buy that Banner of War Alpha last week, Thor this week, Hulk, probably next week. I think Hulk comes out. So you could be getting money out of your X line and that, Thor Hulk 60th anniversary event that you got going on at the exact same time. If you just space out your fucking releases, incompetent fools.
We know that we are in Destiny of X, and Jordan White himself, the group editor of X-Men, explained that they ended up rebooting all these series because they needed a hit as far as the sales. The sales had declined quite a bit. I wonder why that happened. Maybe it's oversaturation. Maybe it's low quality. Jordan White kind of talks about it. We explore it further, look at the sales numbers. X-Men have a huge problem. These reboots aren't going to solve it. There needs to be more quality.